All right. So looks like we're all set. So thank you, Mary, for your help, and thanks for having me here. So as I said earlier, my name is Khanjan Mehta. I serve as the Vice Provost for Creative Inquiry and Director of the Mount Up Initiative. I've been at Lehigh about 4 years now. If you can please advance the slides quickly. Can you advance the slide? Hello?
Wait a second.
Sure. So my the slide's going to get. Okay, can I control it? No.
No, you can't.
Okay. Can you just get it in one slide mode so it's not showing the next slide?
No, we can't.
Okay, wonderful. So let's keep going then. So my background is in is in addressing global development challenges. I'd like to think that most of you are familiar with the base of the pyramid. Can you advance the slide? So there are about 7.4 billion people in the world, and you have about 1 billion people that live on $60 a day, what 1.4 billion that live on 10 to 60 bucks a day. A large portion of these people living on 10 to $60 and 2 to $10 a day, living in the BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, 4 countries with enormous populations and growing middle classes. And then you have more than 1 billion people that live on less than $2.5 a day. And the whole point here is that over time, while some of these actual absolute numbers might have changed and people have gone up from $2 to $2.5, the ratios have not changed a whole lot. And at the bottom of the socioeconomic pyramid, you have billions of people who live on very little money, and those are the largest growing underserved markets in an informal economy. And while individually they might not have much power, collectively they have tremendous economic clout. And so we see more and more companies designing products and services to address the needs of the people at the base of this pyramid. And that's an important concept for us for social enterprise, because traditionally 90% of the world's products are designed for 10% of the world's population. And the question here, the challenge here is, how do we split this? How do we invert this phenomena, and how do we design products for the other 90%? That is where, instead of thinking of them as passive recipients of charity, we think of them as our customers and active partners, and design products that help them improve their quality of life. So if you can move forward, Marie. So before I came to Lehigh 4 years back, I was at Penn State University, where I started up an academic program in humanitarian engineering and social entrepreneurship. And so we worked on a wide array of projects, from telemedicine systems to affordable greenhouses to prosthetic devices. Forward. So this is a picture of our greenhouse, and we have operations now in Sierra Leone, Mozambique, Zambia, Kenya, Cameroon, and a bunch of other countries where we manufacture and sell these low-cost greenhouses. And over the years, we've actually built more than 2,000 greenhouses now that have empowered literally thousands of farmers across all these different countries to improve their quality of life. And then if you advance forward, we took this technology and we converted them into mushroom houses for mushroom production. And working with a nonprofit called World Hope International in Cambodia, now we have about 250 farmers growing about 6,000 kilos of mushrooms on a weekly basis, and supplying them to the capital city of Phnom Penh, which meets about half of their demand. So if you go to Cambodia and you eat something with straw mushrooms in it, there's a 1 in 2 chance in Phnom Penh, especially, that those mushrooms came from one of our farmers, and all this work was done by students at Lehigh University. You advance forward. Another venture was a telemedicine system where we have a bunch of women that serve as social franchisees that go out into communities and get them connected to the formal healthcare system and charge them a small fee for providing that service. And this venture has also been running now for almost the last 10 years or so. Forward. This is one of our beautiful failures. About a few years back, we had a conversation with the team that was working on low-cost prosthetic devices that you could print on a 3D printer, and they requested us to do the due diligence and figure out a way to commercialize these in low-resource countries. And so we spent almost a good part of a year doing the due diligence, and we found that these look really cool. And it's a really cool concept to make your own $20 prosthetic device. But in fact, it actually does not have a good product market fit, and it does not solve a real problem out in the world. So the point is that there are some projects that fail, but there are many others that don't fail. But what's important is that you keep trying and coming up with new ways to address old and new challenges. So let me transition quickly, if you go to the next slide, to talk very quickly about why projects fail. And it's important to understand why things fail so that you can do better. And I'm going to go through this very quickly. So Mary's going to be my best friend and help me advance the slides forward. So I'm an engineer, and I love technology. I love to imagine how we can develop new things that make life better for people. Some of you might have heard of the One Laptop Per Child project. They got a lot of press about 10 years back. It was an MIT project, and the idea was to get a computer to every single child. Sounds wonderful, but the project got nowhere close to what they were hoping to accomplish. And if you look at all the different reasons they failed, that would be the one education you need in technology and business for low resource settings, for low and middle income countries. So I would strongly advise you to go and look into what happened with the One Laptop Per Child project. Here's another product. It's called the Clean Straw. And can you advance the slide? So it's a beautiful product. It costs about $30, and you can use this clean straw to drink water anywhere in the world. It really works beautifully well as a technology product, but I've never seen people in developing countries use some of these clean straws because what you're looking at the picture is probably not how you would want to consume water on a day-to-day basis, right? You just have to go to the water source, bend down, you suck a lot, and you get a little bit of water. So great solution from a technology perspective, but it does not empower as many people. And very few people can afford a $30 clean straw that they have to walk around with and then keep sucking for a long time to get the water. Here's another product that came out of Stanford University. It's called the D-Light. It's a solar lantern, incredibly successful, and I've seen these being sold in all parts of the world. And the question is, what makes this a transformative product, while the One Laptop Per Child or the Clean Straw really were not able to achieve that kind of scale? So here are a bunch of questions that I'm gonna open up and share with you that you should be asking as you're developing solutions for any kind of context, but much more so for Central Asia or for the least developed countries in the world. So that's again where Kazakhstan versus Kyrgyzstan versus Uzbekistan are three very different ecosystems, three very different contexts and cultures. And while you may share a lot in common, the supply chain scenarios, the socioeconomic strata, the values might be somewhat different. And so you have to think more about each of these questions. So let's go through them very quickly. If you can advance the slide. The first and incredibly important question is your technology affordable? So we know that, is your product affordable? So we know that 30 to 60% of the food grown in the world is wasted because there is no way to get it to a shelf-stable form. So you grow apples, right? In Almaty, we grow a lot of apples, and we can eat only so many apples. If we cannot do some kind of processing to extend their shelf life, those apples are wasted, and that's a huge global problem. And we lose half the food we produce because of a lack of good post-harvest processing. So here's a solar food desiccator. You can use it to dry food products and extend their shelf life. It's beautiful. It works, but it costs $5,000. And so very few people in low resource settings can afford it. And if they can't afford it, they can't maintain it. It's a matter of time before it's going to break, and that's going to be the end of it. So your product needs to be affordable. Second question, if you can advance the slide forward, you need to have a business model. This is another excellent case study of a venture called Play Pump. And the basic idea was that people spend a lot of time getting water from point A to point B. So you will see women with big pails of water walking long distances to get the water. And what if there was a pump on which kids could play and that would pump the water from point A to point B? That's exactly what they did. As you can see, the kids are playing on this merry-go-round. As it's moving, the water is being pumped to the overhead tank. Sounds great in principle, but there is no business model. This thing costs $1,000, and very few places can afford $1,000. And so they thought they could put advertising up on the tanks, but that did not work very well either. And the kids actually got bored of playing on the merry-go-round, and so they started. So the women had to go and then keep moving the merry-go-round to pump the water, which just added to their workload. So the point is, you need to have a good business model for your product. Next slide. Your product might be affordable, could have a business model, but is it something people really want to do? So that $5,000 solar food dryer did not work. So we actually came up with a $200 solar food dryer. We actually made it for $120. And we went back to the 50 farmers that we had talked to earlier and said, hey, look, here's the thing. Now you can use it to dry your tomatoes, bananas, kale, what have you, and extend the shelf life. And they said, well, that sounds wonderful in principle, but you know what? We're not interested because this drying business is somebody else's job and not our job. So is your product desirable? Is it something that people are willing to do? Next slide. Does it meet every need? So this is another example of a technology product. It's a parabolic reflector. It's like a solar cooker, and you can cook in it. Sounds great in principle, but you know, our food is such an important part of our culture. And can you cook pizza? Can I make my all kinds of different foods in that cooker with the same texture? Probably not. And so I'm not going to use it. It costs $300, $400. I can't afford it, and I'm not going to pay for it unless somebody gives it to me for free. Then I might use it to do something. But there are reasons why people prefer using an open fire, such as smoking out their house and getting rid of insects, or they live up in the mountains and it gets cold and the fire helps them to heat up their little homes. So does your product meet every need is a question you should be asking. Next, is it pretty? So this is one of our greenhouses I showed you earlier. All the materials are available locally except for the plastic covering, which is important. And we actually found a way to use rice bags coated with certain materials to make everything locally accessible. And we went back to the farmer and said, look, this is a way for us to bring down the cost of the greenhouse by $100. And they said, well, sounds great, but you know what? This does not look pretty, and we want our greenhouse to look just as pretty as what our neighbors have. So your product needs to be attractive. It has to appeal to people's aspirations. Next slide. Who's going to manufacture your product? So Super Moneymaker Pump sold in Kenya to hundreds of thousands of people to pump water, but it's manufactured in China because manufacturing it locally would just not make any sense because it would drive the cost up to a point where people cannot afford it anymore. Can you move forward? What if your product hurts the environment? There are a lot of great technologies, but they're also that might help people but are not good for the environment. At the same time, we know that as people make more money, they make more eco-friendly decisions. So do the ends justify the means becomes the big question here. Next slide. Is it socially acceptable? And this is something we can talk about for a long time, but this is a treadle pump, and this is women work on it for about 45 minutes to pump water from point A to point B. And these are phenomenal, and they've empowered millions of women around the world, saved them a lot of time and effort, saved them from all kinds of bad situations that they are in when they're walking long distances by themselves. But in many parts of the world, they have been rejected for a bunch of reasons. Like when the women walk to the place where the water is, that's where the men are waiting for them. That's how their courtship procedure works. Or when the women are working on it, the sway of their hips is considered provocative in more conservative cultures like in Bangladesh. And so people stop using it. So what's the point? You need to ensure that your product aligns with the social norms and mores of the communities that you're working with. And if not, you're pushing them in a direction that they're ready to be pushed in. Finally, will your product reach the people? You can have the best product that meets a lot of real customer needs, but how does your product get to the people remains one of the major challenges for all kinds of products or for low resource settings. And finally, will your product scale? Some of the largest problems in the world are problems of scale. You can solve a problem for 100 people, 1,000 people. But if you want to solve a problem for 1,000,000 people, you want to think about scale from day one. It cannot be an afterthought. So to very quickly summarize, if you go forward, we need to design with communities and commercialize products for markets. And when we think about sustainable and scalable solutions, go forward, click. Your product needs to be technologically appropriate, environmentally benign, culturally acceptable, and economically sustainable, and all four aspects are just as important. So that's a major takeaway from what I just talked about over the last few minutes. So let's talk about five quick takeaways and then move on to some real examples. So the first question is, it does not matter what the problem is. What matters and what all of you should be thinking about as aspiring entrepreneurs in a global setting is what are the problems for which you can actually design and deliver sustainable solutions, right? So it's not about what the problem is, it's about what the opportunity is, where you can make change. Second, can you click? And click just a bunch of times to get through all the content on the slide. So the smallest unit of value creation is not a specific technology component, but it's a process that creates value. So whether it's drying tomatoes or drying fish or drying bananas, you have a product like a solar dryer at the core of it, but that product does not work by itself. There are a bunch of things that need to happen before, and there are a bunch of things that need to happen after. And that process, that entire process of pre-processing, drying, and post-processing makes money for somebody. It creates economic value and social value. And so you have to design not just one solar dryer, but the entire ensemble, the entire system that creates value for your customers. You go forward. Forward. So some of you might have seen this before. In the business world, the typical venture life cycle, it all starts with an idea, but as we know, ideas are useless, they are worthless. It all starts with a good idea, but you need to work on that idea further. You need to develop your prototypes and pilots, do a bunch of pilot rounds, and then you launch your venture. At some point, hopefully you make money. And so if you think about this whole journey from idea to product to launch to obsolescence or reinvention, this journey, the most critical stage in this is this journey of the implementation from when you launch the venture to when you reach some kind of stability. And that execution strategy, if you go forward, is something that needs to be very actively designed. And that journey does not look like that. It looks like this. You can advance the slide. You're going to keep pivoting, and you have to keep learning, pivoting, keep changing your strategy until you figure out what works. So in that journey, if you go forward, the technology, the business, the policy, the product is just 10% of the work, right? The other 90% of the work that will get you the fruits, it's all about venture creation. And that previous slide, that picture was of a pulse oximeter. It's one of those devices that has become pretty popular in Corona times because it gives you the oxygen saturation in your blood. And oftentimes what's used in Africa costs upwards of a couple $100. And we designed a device for $10, which actually works beautifully well. But then we realized that, sure, you can have a $10 product that is made of like hard steel that is ruggedized for the context. But how in the world will you get that product out to your customers? That venture creation is really difficult when you have a very small profit margin. So the product is 10%, venture creation is 90%. And final, the most important takeaway from looking at all these failures is that you need to keep pivoting until you are successful. So we spent the last 15 minutes, almost 20 minutes now, talking about why ventures fail. So let's look forward and talk a little bit about education for a life of impact and the kinds of things that you should be thinking about as young professionals. So I'm sure some of you are familiar. So first of all, I believe that a university is the place where you find your place in the universe. And at Lehigh, we are very clear that we prepare students for a life of impact. We want them to go out and change the world, make it a better place. And so we care as much about our students' impact on the human condition as we care about their own journey, as we care about them finding their ikigai. So if you can forward to the next slide. This is a Japanese concept called ikigai. It translates to your reason for being. It's about helping students find this intersection between what they love, what they are good at, what the world needs, and what they can be paid for. In other words, find this intersection between your mission, passion, vocation, and profession. And I would challenge all of you to think about what is your ikigai? What is that magical place between what you love, a real challenge in the world that helps you come alive? Next slide. So to find this ikigai, it's not about traditionally education has focused so much on skill sets. And we believe that skill sets are important, but mindsets are even more important because the average graduate is not going to have 1, 2, 3 jobs over their lifetime, but going to have 12 to 15 different jobs. And so our job as a university is to prepare them for all of these different positions that they're going to have or create over their 40 years of working life. And so we need to focus much more on the mindset. The mindset is about believing and thinking. If you have the right mindset, you can learn whatever it is you need to learn to be successful. You can develop whatever skill sets you want. So it all starts with the mindset. You develop certain skill sets and ultimately you manifest them through portfolios. These are the real things that you have done. And so for us, a life of education includes mindsets, skill sets, and portfolios that help students develop their agency and self-efficacy and find their sense of purpose and belonging in the world. And this is not about students, this is about everybody at every stage of the journey to think about what is there, who they are, and how they want to play in the economy of life. So how do we develop these skill sets, mindsets, and portfolios? Next slide, the answer is most certainly not to have students take more courses and write more exams, right? Colossal waste of time. Or next slide, to spend hours and hours taking simple problems and developing complex solutions like you do with some of you might be familiar with what you're looking at here. It's a Rube Goldberg machine where you take a simple problem and come up with a complex solution. And I look at that and I'm thinking, what a colossal waste of time. Why are we doing this when there are so many really complex, really real challenges in the world in need for simple solutions? So that's what we should be focusing our time on. So at Lehigh, I run a bunch of different programs in several countries, several programs in the US, but also in other parts of the world that are all focused on real, meaningful, and authentic projects. And I'm going to give you some examples of what these look like. Can you go forward? And next slide. So the emphasis across all our different projects is on creating something that does not exist. Can you go slide forward, please, Barry? Thank you. So it's about creating something, right? Creating new knowledge, new technologies, new businesses, new strategies, medicines, drug delivery systems, plays, new religions, new what have you, right? It's all about creating something that does not exist. And we have several programs where we do this. It's academic in the during fall and spring semesters. In the summer, we have a program called the Montup Summer Experience where we pay students a stipend so that they can work on their projects on a full-time basis. And we have almost 45 projects in our ecosystem right now that are all trying to create something that will advance the world forward. And then we have 3 programs called the Impact Fellowships, where we have students work on global social innovation challenges. Forward. So for the Global Social Impact Fellowship, we have projects right now in Sierra Leone. I just came back from Sierra Leone a few hours back, which is why I'm a little groggy. And I was there for 2 weeks and trying to get things ready for our students who will be traveling there in a few months. We have some projects in the Philippines, and we're really excited for the 2 projects that we have in Kazakhstan right now. And we're trying to grow these projects. We're looking for more opportunities to engage with the universities, with tech incubators, with anybody that is really passionate about solving important global challenges. So what kind of problems do we work on? Quickly, if you can move forward, we have a team that is working on a diagnostic device for sickle cell trait that affects a quarter of the population, and the diagnostic devices right now cost upwards of $200. Our team is working on a $2 device, and that's getting pretty close to clinical trials now. I told you a little bit about our mushroom projects in Cambodia. We are now trying to do the same in Sierra Leone and to produce mushrooms on a commercial scale to fight malnutrition and stunting, because 40% of the kids in Sierra Leone are stunted. Can you move forward? So mushroom production systems, move forward. Sierra Leone has the highest maternal mortality rate in the world. So we have a team that is working on a documentary on safe motherhood to shine the spotlight on what's working well, what's not working well. Can you forward? Here's a team called Plastic Ventures. They're working in Philippines, and what they are doing is they've got a bunch of machines that they have designed that take plastic waste and convert them into high-value products. You can make bricks out of plastic waste. You can make just all kinds of different products out of plastic waste. And this is a great way to create employment opportunities for middle-aged women who find it very difficult to integrate into the workforce. So this is about plastic waste processing. The next one, Save Tuba, is actually is the one we are working on in Kazakhstan. You can forward slide, please. Thank you. So tuba is the name of a saiga that lives on the steppes, and with pollution and overcrowding and all the different sustainability challenges, it's getting more extinct. And so this app takes middle school students, starting with the Nazarbayev schools in Almaty, on a wild ride where they work on different kinds of challenges and they learn about sustainability, and they try to actually do hands-on things that improve recycling, reduce pollution in Almaty. So we've been working with students from Alma U. It's been a phenomenal partnership, and so Ijurim Serpakova, who is my counterpart at Alma U, we are going to be having our students in Almaty hopefully in a few months, depending on how the Corona situation goes, and working with teachers to start integrating this into schools. Next slide. As I mentioned, we have another project focused on air quality. And then here's another of our flagship ventures. It's a test strip to screen women for urinary tract infections and preeclampsia that we have been running in Sierra Leone. And right now, about 500,000 people have access to these test strips, and we are trying to expand this to the rest of the country. So next slide. If I think about the journey for this device, we did not just design the device, we designed the entire ensemble of all different kinds of products and encounters and regulatory paperwork and about 40 different kinds of things to make this project successful. The test strip alone does not solve a problem. You need to think about the entire ensemble. What's the point of this? All right, next slide. So we have several projects that are part of our Lehigh Valley Social Impact Fellowship. So we have students working on building multi-million small enterprises in all these different countries. And the same happens in the US. Like we have teams that are working on virtual reality education systems and working with local libraries and schools and nature centers, as well as middle schools, to make learning more fun. Next slide. We have a team that is working with the prison system to educate people about the school to prison pipeline and systemic racism, which, as you know, we have an enormous challenge with in the U.S. And that's why we're using social justice theater to bring these concepts to the general public. So go forward, click, click, click. All right, keep going, keep going. Okay, I talked about so there's a virtual reality team forward. And then we have a bunch of projects that are part of our Campus Sustainable Impact Fellowship. And this is where they're working on campus sustainability and making the campus a more sustainable place. So for example, we have a team, can you click forward? We'll wrap up in 2 minutes. A team that is working on your food carbon footprint. So when you go to the cafeteria, you get something to eat, it tells you exactly what the climate impact, the carbon footprint of whatever you're eating is, and it nudges you to eat more low carbon options. Can you click? So that's one example of eating a portion of lamb is equivalent to driving 91 miles, beef is 63 miles, turkey is 25 miles, and chickpeas is driving 2 miles, right? So it basically tries to explain to students how they can make better choices with their food. Can you go forward? We have another team that is studying our food ecosystem on campus, trying to make sure that all kids have access to enough food, and we're also sharing what we don't need with the local community. Go forward. We have a team that's working on an energy and water dashboard for the campus. So you can go to this website and you can see how energy is being used so that you can have 2 dorms that are competing with each other to use less energy or to use less water. Next, we are exploring having living walls in buildings. We have a team that is working on transportation systems. So we have like 8 to 9 different projects that are all focused on campus sustainability. So let me wrap up by saying that why do you do things like these? I'm going to give you 10 very quick reasons. So Mary, if you can advance. So first is that you actually do social impact, not just learn about it. You work with real ventures, real people, and have real impact. So I don't waste your time, working on things that don't have a life beyond the time that you have spent on it. Think about what are the kinds of things we should do that will lead to real impact for real people in real time. Can you go forward? Click, click, next. Great way to to travel, to build life skills, to explore other cultures, to understand them, and make friendships. Go forward. Work in multidisciplinary teams because you quickly realize that a bunch of business people, a bunch of engineers are not going to solve as many problems as they're going to create. So you really need people from all different walks of life, different education levels, different age groups to come together to really develop solutions that work. Next, great way to become a global professional. So think about opportunities in Almaty, but you are really leaders in the entire Central Asia region. So what are the opportunities in other Central Asian countries, in other parts of the world? Go forward. It's important that whatever you come up with, whatever you create, that you share it with others by open sourcing it, by publishing it. And I would advocate for the publishing route so that you can get your work out to a larger body, into the larger knowledge base and share it with more people. And a great way to do that is through professional conferences such as these, like the one you're attending now, to share some of your insights with others. Can you go forward? And click. Working on these kinds of challenges is a great way to distinguish yourself, whether you're looking for graduate opportunities or Fulbrights or med schools or other such opportunities where you really need to show how you're different in what you have accomplished. Can you go forward? A pathway into impact-focused careers. Go forward. For those of you who are really interested in building careers in social innovation and global sustainable development, I'll send you a link over to somebody of a book, a 400-page book with a lot of resources, and you can also download it on ResearchGate. and it's called Solving Problems That Matter and Getting Paid for It, where you can learn a lot more about how you can pursue careers focused on social innovation and sustainable development. And can you go forward? Working on these kinds of challenges is a great way to have fun and build lifelong friendships. But the number one reason you should be pursuing it is for the reasons we pursue it. And the top three reasons why we do what we do is because our goals are impact, impact, and impact. So can you go forward? So it's an impact, it's impact, and impact, and impact. So I'm going to end it here. Thank you so much, Mary, for advancing those slides. I know that wasn't fun, but we made it work. So thank you, and we might have time for a couple of questions. So go out and get stuff done.